to Holton's Fix It 101. Today we are going to be talking about soldering. Now, I've seen a lot of videos on YouTube of people doing soldering. Some of it I see that they're doing it wrong, and some of it they're doing it really well. Today I'm going to show you how I do soldering. Now, soldering affects us all in our everyday lives, to whether we're fitting a plug. This was a 13 amp plug, it's here in the UK, or whether you're doing anything automotive or just soldering a wire. There are other aspects of soldering that we get involved in. Some of it's plumbing with a gas torch, and there are a lot of other ways of doing soldering, but I'm going to show you a basic way of doing soldering today. Here we are at the bench, and I'll show you various types of soldering iron that you can purchase, buy, whatever. And from the get-go, before I get into the soldering irons, I will actually say to you, make sure that you have a decent roll of soldering iron, or soldering wire, sorry, on a roll, and it will save your life no end. You can buy cheap versions, but they are cheap and they come from China obviously, and they're not very good. So always get yourself a decent roll of flux. This is flux core wire. I'm not sure of the size, it doesn't actually say it on there, but get yourself a decent roll because it will save your life twofold. A decent set of wire cutters. Make sure that you can cut your wires. This is absolute lifesaver. Get yourself a decent, and I mean a decent, wire stripper, and it saves me absolutely in every single way every day. You might want to get yourself a utility knife, or use a utility knife at some point in time, and that's basically those tools there. Now, getting into soldering irons, there are several different types that you can get. This one obviously here plugs into the wall. It's mains powered. It's very good. I've had this one for absolutely years, and it's never failed or let me down. And I call it Old Faithful, and it really is Old Faithful, and it's done me proud. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, you have a 12 volt version that obviously got these crocodile clips that go onto your battery, and I've used this on several occasions when I've not been able or close to any power from my outlet. Obviously it's got a nice long cord, so you can plug it into your battery of your car, and you can go right to the back of the car and do your soldering, whatever you need to do. It's absolute lifesaver. Now, I'm not saying that you have to use this on an everyday basis, but if you haven't got any power outlet from the wall, if you're out somewhere or something like that, or someone says to you, oh, I've got to solder this wire, but I'm not close to the house or whatever, absolute lifesaver. Now, going on from that, we have something a little bit more professional in our arsenal of stuff. This is a very more professional item that I managed to get hold of. It's what they call a rework station. Now, it has the soldering iron, and it also has a blowgun that comes on this as well. And people will say, why would you need a blowgun? But there are situations that you want to be using a desoldering tool, which I haven't got laid out here, that you want to just heat up the solder in a specific area, and there's also little attachments that allow you to do that. Now, you put on the end obviously. It has different varying degrees on the front here of different heat for the actual desoldering tool, and it has different heats for the actual soldering iron, and it keeps it that constant heat no matter what you set this at. It has dials, it has a LCD dial on the front here to tell you what heat you've actually set it, and your soldering iron will actually keep to the heat that you actually need constantly. It will never ever go down, it will never ever go up. It will stay at that heat. So that is a little bit more professional. Then we move on to the butane gas gun. Now this is very much like the 12 volt soldering iron. This is slightly a bit more portable, even if you want to put it for want of a better word. You actually light it with a lighter and switch it on obviously, and light it with a lighter, and you can actually carry on doing your soldering and everything else, and it is very, very useful, very, very portable, and you don't have that wire as well. That's the main thing about this. Now, going on to torches, obviously there's the butane torch, which is quite fierce in some respect because it's got quite a big flame that comes out of the end of it. Now obviously you wouldn't go and use this just for soldering a wire, but you would actually use this for maybe plumbing or something like that. Plumbing is not my realm and I don't like it, but I do it. But this is not what we're talking about today. Now, going on to the smaller version of a blowtorch, this here is a little butane torch, and you turn the top and it goes on, and you just get there a lighter and light the end, and it's a very little tiny flame, and it's very, very useful for doing little connectors and stuff like that, because you can solder connectors on. Not many people know that, but a lot of people crimp them, but you can actually solder them on. It's filled up with a normal gas that you actually put in your lighter, you know, for cigarettes and that sort of thing. Not saying that everyone's got to be smokers, but it's very, very useful, and I've used this on several occasions for different applications and jobs. Very, very easy to use, very portable, and when you finish using it, it can go into your top pocket, and you don't have to have a lot of wires and everything else hanging around. Right, now here we are. I've got the soldering iron all set up and going, and make sure that you pull yourself out a strip of solder, and I've discovered this is 1.5 mil solder now. Always make sure that you tin the end of your soldering iron, all nicely heated up. This is Old Faithful, by the way. Now I've pre-stripped some pieces of wire, just little bits of wire, just to show you that you know how to solder. A lot of people say that, oh yeah, well, I'll put the wire on there and then I'll put the solder on the top. Yeah, that's fair enough, okay, everyone can do that. And a lot of people try and wrap some solder around the wire, and I've actually seen this on YouTube and everything else, and it's completely the wrong way of doing it. The idea is that you heat up the wire and you add the solder to the wire. Do not add the solder to the soldering iron and then dip the thing onto the soldering iron expecting it to work, because it will not. You put the wire on the end of the soldering iron after you've pre-tinned it, and then you add the solder to the end of the wire, and as you can see from that there, it comes out a perfect every time solder on the end of that wire. I'll do it again just to show you. Make sure that your soldering iron is tinned. You put the wire on the end of the soldering iron, and you heat up the wire. And you add the solder to the wire, not to the soldering iron. You pull it off, and it comes out absolutely perfect in every single way, every time. Now, a lot of people say, oh, that's perfect, that's a bit long and everything else, which it is. So that's why we have the snips, and you can snip off to the length now that you actually require. Always solder more than you need. So if I wanted to put that into, say, like a crimping tool, I can do that now, because those wires now are actually sealed together and they will not fray or anything like that. Now, a lot of people have said, now that's all very well, but now how do I solder two pieces of wire together? Now, there are several ways of doing this. You can put them together sort of like that, or you'd be able to, after you solder them, or tin them as the term is implied, or you can leave them bare like I've done there. And I found that the best way is to put them together like that, and then just cross them over as you would be putting up a twist on the top of a bag. Now, as you can see, they are pretty well together already. So now I just take my soldering iron like so, and I make sure that the end of the soldering iron is obviously just got a little bit of solder on it, just a tin. And I put the wire on the end of the soldering iron again. Again, I'm going to heat the wire up, and you solder the wire. Do not put solder on your soldering iron. The only time you do that is to pre-tin the soldering iron before you put the wire on there. Now, as you can see, that is pretty well together. It is solid. You cannot get that apart now. Now, obviously, if this bit of wire here is actually connected to something, then you'll need to put some heat sink or something like that on it. And by the time you put your heat sink on, shrink it down, that becomes a very, very strong joint. And that is the best way I found to actually joining two wires together. There are, like I said, there's several ways of grabbing the wire and just adding it in as you need to. Now, that's all very fair enough, but I don't find that that's very strong. That's my own personal preference. It's up to you whichever way you want to do it. It's entirely. But there we go, two wires connected together. Very, very good. And very, very strong. Well, there you go. Soldering. Now, there are several things that I would like to point out before I end this, that I recommend to anyone that they get themselves a decent roll of solder. Don't get a cheap thing, because the solder is absolutely rubbish. Always have a decent soldering iron, and I recommend to anyone that get the best of what you can afford. Don't try and get the best one out there and then don't know how to use it. Don't get the cheapest one, because again, it's like any tool in the world. You buy cheap, you buy twice, and that is the rule of thumb. Now, please, and I would say to anyone about this, that follow some safety rules when you are using soldering irons, because these things get extremely hot in very, very short space of time, and they take a long time to cool down. Now, please put them away somewhere where they are able to cool down for half an hour, whatever it takes. No matter which one you're using, whether you're using a gas butane torch like this one here, or whether you're using one that's corded like this. Now I'm going to leave, because I've been using this one, I am going to put it to one side. Now, and why I say that is because there are other people that might be around you, working in your environment along with you as well, and you don't want them to go and put their hands on it, or you don't want them to go and trip over the cord, especially one that's corded like this. And when you're working with the soldering iron, use the soldering iron on something that's not necessarily flammable. You wouldn't, like you've seen here, I've used it on a piece of wood, which, you know, soldering is not going to burn wood in that sense, if you be sensible. Obviously if you stab it in there, it's going to. But obviously don't use it on cloth and carpets and stuff like that. And please don't try it on your nice kitchen table, because the wife or the girlfriend or whatever is going to scream at you. That's a big no-go. Always make sure that you have a decent set of these though, and make sure that your hands are kept out of the way of the tip of this. So there we go, basic soldering from Halton's Fix It 101. I'll see you next time.